Hi. Hi, everybody out there. Now, for those of you who are maybe familiar with me, I'll tell you a couple of things to start. So, my name is Tammy Terry Singleton. And I have to throw in the whole name and say Terry since I'm talking to you today from my hometown of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So many times, for those of you that I've had an opportunity to meet or perhaps share a lecture with, greet at a meeting from time to time, or maybe even some patients who are out there, most of the time when we're having a conversation, as I always refer to it as, we're having a conversation about something educational, something pretty serious, right? We're talking about a hemophilia-related topic, quality of life. Education is my favorite thing to participate or engage in. But today, I'm going to be a little vulnerable. So today, I'm going to tell you a little more about myself, a few personal things, a lot of personal things about myself, because I think it's important that I share this story today, share my story, share my momentum. Let's get started. So, I said I was going to get a little personal. So, again, I am from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, born and raised, and actually my family has been in the Baton Rouge area for a little over 200 years, both sides. My mom, Carol Hurst Terry, is originally from a place that they refer to here in Baton Rouge as South Baton Rouge. She was from a very large Catholic Creole family where she was child number 10 of 10. My grandparents were amazing people. They lived in a house that I thought was like a huge house at the time, but in actuality, it was a 3-room shotgun, and how all 10 of those guys, 12 of those guys, existed in there for forever, I have absolutely no idea. But part of the personality that you see when you're looking at me and that whole genuine spirit that comes across, because it's just that, very genuine, I don't know how to be anything else, I really hold her completely responsible for. My dad, Willard Burnell Terry Sr., also from right here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, was an only child. And he has a very interesting story too. So my dad, the only child of Evelyn Thomas Terry and Julius Terry, grew up in a place here in Baton Rouge called Morningside, right at the corner of Main Street and Segura, not far from what is referred to now as the old Baton Rouge General. That's where I spent most of my formative years as well. My dad, in my opinion, was one of the smartest and most brilliant people I've ever known. Why he had all those facts in his head, I have no idea, but I think he was a walking encyclopedia. I credit him for the knowledge base that I have. I credit him for my passion and love for education. I also credit him for some of my speaking abilities and teaching abilities and that whole, again, spirit and love and passion for education. There are a couple of things that are very interesting about my family that I think are important and really make me who I am. I sometimes describe myself as never stopping, never quitting, because I stand on the shoulders of giants. And when I say that, I mean my dad was just 2 generations from slavery. His great-grandmother was born a slave right here in Louisiana. But what's interesting from that, my grandmother, right here in Baton Rouge, actually provided the first kindergarten for Black students right here in East Baton Rouge Parish. She was very well known in the city, and she was relentless and never stopped. Again, I stand on the shoulders of giants. My dad retired as a major in the United States Army and was an educator here in the city. Again, amazing, amazing people. And so the roots there, my grandmother, my grandparents, my parents, they are completely responsible for me being who I am. So again, sometimes people say, oh, Tammy, Dr. Singleton, you have such a genuine spirit. You seem to have such a great passion for education. None of those things are an accident. So sometimes we start with great beginnings, and sometimes we have challenges. And I just want to share a few more interesting facts kind of about my story, and hopefully you'll find them interesting as well. So I had some inspiration along the way. Again, I'm from Baton Rouge. I went to McKinley Middle Magnet School. I went to Baton Rouge High School only for a minute because I told my parents one day I want a football team and a band and some cheerleaders, and can I please get out of here? Well, they agreed, and I ultimately graduated from Robert E. Lee High School right here in Baton Rouge. I was always a fairly decent student, but did I know that I wanted to be a doctor? Probably not. Maybe the MASH episodes that they couldn't pull me away from probably gave me a little clue in retrospect. But I had no idea that I could even be a doctor. But then one day, one of my mom's older sisters, she was a PhD. She was an English professor at Southern University. She looked at me one day and she said, "You know what, Tammy? Do you know that you can be a doctor?" "I can be a doctor?" She says, "Yes, you can be a doctor. You can be any kind of doctor you want to be if you want to be a doctor." And she, picked up a cup of coffee with her house coat and just walked on off. Well, she left a huge impression on me. And I didn't know what that meant then, but that was just a droplet of inspiration. My inspiration also comes from the fact that I'm from a huge family right here in Baton Rouge. All kinds of people. So I can promise you that as a doctor, as a person, that whatever I'm presented with, I think that I've seen it before. Sometimes I talk to people and I'll go, "Oh, that's my Uncle Harry." Sometimes I talk to people and I go, "That's my Auntie Maisel." Every now and then there's a cousin of mine. I have crazy ones, I have nice ones, I have mean ones, I have amazing ones, I have abusive ones. I have the ones that you kind of don't want to tell them about the family dinner, but you kind of have to. I have all of that. But in all of that, with all of them, the good, the bad, the amazing, and the great, I find and continue to find some inspiration, and I'm very proud of the family that I come from. In addition to that, I mentioned I'm a Baton Rouge girl. That means I'm a girl from South Louisiana. My dad was a sportsman. All my brothers were sportsmen. Every now and then my dad would say, "Oh, Tammy, you're the only Chris and Terry who doesn't know how to shoot." And I'm just fine with that to this day. I want to let you know. Going hunting was like not my cup of tea. I did, however, love to fish. I picked up amazing habits like boiling crawfish, cooking, having tons of people over, going to parades, festivals, hanging out with family members. A lot of things that a lot of you do, but just in a different way, maybe in a different part of the country. But it's just so interesting when you think about it, right? All of those little things that really make us who we are. My culture and being a South Louisiana girl is incredibly important to me, and I couldn't hide it if I wanted to. In addition to that, I call New Orleans my adopted city. So I went or attended Xavier University of Louisiana. Did you catch that? Did you see how proud I was when I said that? I'm a very, very proud alumna, class of 1994, chemistry major, one of the best decisions I ever made. I always think how blessed I was to have an opportunity to attend a private Catholic university. It is a historical black college located right in the heart of the city of New Orleans. My parents, again, were both educators, so paying for that, even with the scholarship that I had, wasn't an easy feat. So I still consider it to be one of the best things, again, that ever happened to me and really put me on a path for the rest of my life. I prayed there, I studied there, I was in the gospel choir there, I had meaningful, lifelong relationships there, and I decided to be a doctor there. Moreover, I believed I could be a doctor there. And every day on my way to class, we didn't even have, at that time, a real chapel at Xavier. It was a very small chapel, almost like a walkthrough. And every day on my way to class, I stopped, got on my knees, and prayed very briefly one simple prayer. Thank you, Lord. And got up and went on my way to class. Well, again, it was at that place where New Orleans became my adopted city. So I participate in the culture of the city of New Orleans. I hang out with the Zulus, with the Mardi Gras parades, and you can see my fancy pictures. I go out with my family. We hang out with friends. We celebrate family and the spirit that we have here in Louisiana. But that whole thing started with the blessing that came to me in being a Xavier University student and now very proud alumna. So I wanted to share the concept that all that glitters isn't gold. When I was in high school and middle school and college, I did pretty well. I was a decent student. I participated in tons of extracurricular activities. I was in pageants. I was on homecoming court. I was friendly to everybody, and I really had an amazing time. But when I think about it, life wasn't perfect. You know, as much as I love my parents and as great as I think they are as human beings, they probably shouldn't have been married. They were wonderful parents individually, but it sort of makes me reflect on the fact that we can't all be good at everything. So living in the house with them sometimes, it could be pretty painful. It was difficult. It wasn't something that we talked about because it's kind of embarrassing. So in the world of social media today, when people are posting pictures and everything looks amazing and everybody's smiling and you're looking at that going, oh my gosh, that person's life must be perfect. It's not. It's not that that person isn't happy. They're waking up every day and doing the best they can, the same way that we all do. I certainly didn't wake up and intend to not do my homework or not be a great student. I don't think my parents woke up every morning and said, gee, let me figure out how I could be the worst wife I could ever be. Or I don't think my dad said, let me figure out how I could be the worst husband I could be, or how could I torment my family today and have an argument with my wife. You know what? Life happens. And so we all have struggles. We all have rewards. And just because someone else's life on the outside appears to be better than yours doesn't mean that it's the case at all. And so have I been very blessed in my life? I certainly have. Have I had a lot of very sad, dark, lonely moments in my life? Sure, I have. Was I incredibly blessed during this time to know God and to have a relationship with God, and that was my personal savior, and that was my journey, and that's what lifted me out of a dark place when everything seemed magnificent and glittered, but it didn't? That was absolutely the case. We may not all believe in the same God. We may not all use the same resources. We may not all have the same coping skills, but we all have an opportunity to have the same hope. So I just wanted to share a couple of photos with my blessings. Again, I've already mentioned that Xavier University and me being a student there was one of the best things that ever happened to me. When I decided to go to medical school, it's so interesting when I reflect on that now. I now understand that when you're on the path that God wants you to be on, when your steps are ordered, the doors just open. Sometimes things seem impossible or hard and you're banging your head up against the wall. And I now have an understanding it's because God's plan is always better than mine. So when I was preparing to leave Xavier University, I wanted to attend the University of Southern California's medical school. I was accepted. I had an apartment. I was on my way, ready and geared up to go because I was finally finally going to get out of Louisiana. No, I'm just kidding. No. When you're from South Louisiana, it's very difficult to leave your family, your mom and them. You know what I mean? Like, it's really hard to get away. But I was like, this was my golden opportunity. So my dad would call every now and then and ask about my LSU School of Medicine in New Orleans. He would ask me about the interview. And I would go, yeah. It's going to be next month. I call up the people and go, can I push that back a little bit? And he'd go, yeah, what about your LSU interview? I go, oh, yeah. Can I push that back a little bit? And I pushed it back until the very last day. To make this very long story short, I went to my interview. I acted crazy on the interview, by the way. Someone asked me a question, and I told her exactly what I thought. I didn't care. And apparently, my candor got me an almost standing ovation with the admissions committee. And there started my steps in terms of them being ordered by God, in my opinion. Because I was accepted to LSU. I had a scholarship to go to LSU. And there was just no question that I could turn that down. My life, again, changed forever, and the trajectory that I was on was not one that I wanted to be on, but it was one, in my opinion, that had been ordered. So this kind of starts a whole nother story. Now, you see that good-looking guy there? It wasn't just the uniform. So I went to LSU, had an amazing education, clinicals at Charity Hospital, just magnificent. But I had a chance to leave, and for general pediatrics, I was accepted at the University of Miami Jackson Memorial Training Program in Miami, Florida. Little did I know that I was going to go all the way to Miami just to meet a really good-looking, totally nice guy from the city of New Orleans. So I, in fact, ran into, it was a little more than a coincidence. I knew his sister-in-law, but had never met him before, and we would kind of set up on a little bit of a blind date, and I'll spare you all of those details. But I met Commander Damon Ivan Singleton, who was stationed at the United States Southern Command headquarters in Miami, Florida. I met him, to make a long story short. We went on one date, and then there you have it. Now, isn't it so interesting how the trajectory of my life didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, exactly the way I wanted it to. Remember, I wanted to go to USC. I wanted to go in a whole different direction, but Damon changed everything because I believe that was kind of ordered by God. To make, again, this long story short, I meet this guy. A couple of years later, we get married. And there's one more really interesting fact about that. I later found out that my dad and his dad, they were in the same ROTC class at Southern University, Baton Rouge, and they both graduated from Southern University in 1954, and they were classmates. Who knew? Something more than a coincidence, right? Those steps were absolutely ordered. So I call the next phase of my life being the obedience phase. Because when I arrived at the University of Miami, I knew that I was interested in general pediatrics. I did a hematology rotation and I was interested, but I had no idea that I would ultimately be a hematologist. I had an opportunity to go to the pediatric hematology oncology floor. And I went there because no one else wanted it at the time. The space was wide open. It fit into my schedule. I really didn't know what to expect at all, but I was told that no one else wanted it. I didn't understand why no one wanted it. And someone said to me, oh, well, it's just such a sad place. No one wants to be there. And I said, well, gee, what an awful thing to say. Like, I want to go. I want to check this out. I went as a resident to the pediatric hematology oncology floor, and I never looked back. My life was changed forever. Changed forever because of the parents that I had an opportunity to meet. Changed forever because of the amazing patients. Changed forever because I felt that I was where I belonged. Now, this was in 1998, and things were very different in 1998. We also, at the University of Miami, had a very large HIV/AIDS unit for children. I don't think that there was a coincidence that my rotation initially was in hematology oncology, and then my rotation thereafter was in the infectious disease pediatric HIV/AIDS unit that was locked away on one of the top floors at the very end of a floor in a very quiet section of the hospital, kind of secluded where no one else was. But in that place, I felt that that was almost like God's work. There were amazing, amazing staff. The children that were there, it's so hard to describe. But I stayed longer than I needed to stay every day. I just felt like I couldn't be pulled away. And there was one patient there who was a hemophilia patient that I met earlier in the Peds Hem-Onc unit, but was now in that place. To make a long story short, I followed him for the 3 years that I was there and ultimately decided that I too wanted to become a pediatric hematologist oncologist because I never wanted to be separated from what I found to be my new passion. The pediatric hematology oncology patients, the patients with hemophilia, and everything that was associated with it. I felt that this was something that was important for me to do. And again, I think when your steps are ordered, things just happen and unfold. So I applied to several programs. I really wanted to go to the Johns Hopkins program in Baltimore, Maryland. I wasn't sure if I was going to get into that program. I said, this is very competitive. I have no idea if it's really going to happen. But again, I think that when you're obedient and your steps are ordered and you're doing what you're supposed to be and in the place where you're supposed to be and not necessarily the place where you want to be, things just happen the way that they're supposed to happen. And so ultimately, my family moving forward is something that I really concentrate on. I came back to New Orleans after having an opportunity to be a pediatric hematologist. And I came back to New Orleans in 2004 as a young junior attending, working hard, wanting to fulfill my dreams, be obedient, take care of patients. And I think we all know what happened the year after 2004. So 2005, Hurricane Katrina hits New Orleans. I'm a very young attending, and at that time, the young man on the totem pole, or last man on the totem pole, is the one who holds down the fort. And so ultimately, at that time, when Hurricane Katrina rolled through, I was the one who was called to duty to stay, to make sure that everything was okay. Well, it just so happens that at that time, I was huge and pregnant with baby number 3. I had 2 little kids, and we were expecting our beautiful daughter, Megan Lena. And I thought that I could do that. I said, you know what? We're going to make this happen. I'm on duty. Everyone else left. I can't abandon my patients. I have to do what I have to do. We all know that Hurricane Katrina was a very devastating event for many people in Southeast Louisiana, as well as the Gulf Coast. Well, it was for me too. So I stayed for Hurricane Katrina. I worked very hard for about 4 weeks thereafter. And week number 4 after Hurricane Katrina, my beautiful, completely amazing little girl, new baby girl, was born and took her last breath at the same time. My life was forever changed. And if I didn't have ultimately my faith, which was hard to find at that time, and if I didn't have, and I'll even use the word, hope, I have no idea how we could have gotten through that at all. But even when you're at your lowest moment, your deepest moment of despair, you're not alone. There are many others who suffer through things. But what helps you with your momentum? What helps to pull you really out of a rut when you're in one? I don't think that I could have answered what that was for me at that time. I now know and understand that it was my faith. I now know and understand that it was God. There was no human strength that I could have had that could have helped me to move forward, to be a doctor, to be a mom, to be a wife after something as horrible as that. I still think that I'm not completely normal, if you're ever normal, after something like that. But I know that I still have my faith, my hope, and my inspiration. And those guys, that's my family, and they help me to remember to move forward. So I want to leave you with a few additional words and one final story. So I was born in 1971. That's Ryan White. He's very inspirational for all of us. And I remember him actually and the story when I was in school, middle school to be exact. Ryan White, of course, had hemophilia and ultimately died of HIV/AIDS and changed the face of our community, the face of medicine, and is the wind beneath our wings in so many ways. I find him inspirational when that ornament hangs on my tree, reminding me that there's hope, reminding me that my steps are ordered, reminding me that even on my worst day, that I have a reason to keep moving. My final daughter, we did have one more child, and she was born in 2007. And interestingly enough, her name is Hope. I hope that you will always have hope. I hope that you will always know that what seems to glitter is not always gold, but that we all have to dig deep. We all have to have some inspiration. Think about today, what's your inspiration? Even doctors, even those who work hard, even those who dedicate ourselves to the things we love, we still have hard times. We still have dark moments, but what keeps us moving forward? My answer is God, my faith, my hope, my reason to keep moving forward. And I also like to say sometimes, you know what, when they're coming for you, you know you're doing something right. So I hope that you can think about this a little bit, and maybe when you see me, that I'll provide you with some additional inspiration. Thanks so much.